Hello and welcome to this week's lesson. I've got about 9 minutes to see what I can do to help you accelerate your learning. I've been doing this for 40 years now, and my goal for the next 40 years is to just figure out ways to accelerate the learning process. What I've come up with so far is the fastest way to do that is to stop making the mistakes everybody else is making. I'm hoping that if I can point those out to you, you won't go to the driving range or the golf course and also make the same mistakes that everyone else seems to be. Therefore, let's see if I can do this, and let's see if this makes sense to you. I always kind of explain the golf swing somewhat like a magic trick. It's one of those things that, if you've ever seen somebody show you how they did the trick, after they show you, you're kind of disappointed. You know what the hard part really is, if I can kind of maybe go into a rant a little bit too, is that when you watch golf on television, you get the commentators saying stuff. Well, what makes us think that what the commentators is saying is correct? How do they know what's going through the guys' heads? But we assume they do. I'm going to give you my version, and I'm going to hope that it makes a ton of sense to you. The reason I made my online academy is so that anyone following my directions is never too far away from the concepts that we teach, and that you can see it over and over again. The downside to learning is when you get a concept, and it may be said to you incorrectly, or you may interpret it incorrectly, you go practice for weeks just to find out that it wasn't correct, therefore we've wasted this time. Okay, so let's see if I can somewhat do it in order for you. What I'd really like to have you start to recognize is when you're watching golf on television these days, there's so much talking about the player being on top of the golf ball. You don't hear too much anymore about being behind it. You really hear about being on top of it. There's a reason. If you take a golf lesson from me or anybody else, everything they ask you to do, there should be a reason behind it. What is it going to do for you? What's it going to do for the shaft of the golf club or the face of the golf club? If you can buy into the concept of that, what we're all trying to do is to get through impact without any breaking down of our hands. Maybe for the first time ever, being on top of the golf ball will make a lot of sense. From here, it's hard for my hands to break down. From here, it's easy. I'm just going to quickly go over this. I'll just do it once. A lot of people are going to have a hard time with this because the first information they got was stay behind it. I know, I heard it too. I just disagree with it. You're welcome to disagree with it. If I don't make more sense than them, then don't listen to me. But the reason I'm trying to learn to get on top of the golf ball is so that I can hit it without my wrist breaking down. I'm looking for that. If I had my perfect ideal situation in the world of teaching golf, I would teach it more like aerobics or Tai Chi than I would actually hitting golf balls. There would be a lot of taking your time getting on top of the golf ball correctly. From here, I can teach you a lot of stuff. From here, boy, does it make it harder, if not impossible, to really get good. You can get okay, but to really get good, you have to be. And this is what I'm looking for. So again, in a perfect world, we may be okay, so once you're satisfied that's in place, the next thing I want you to do is get used to what the arms do during the golf swing. Now the arms are supposed to swing on plane. That's what squares the face. I don't have time to do it all right now, but if you go to the website, it's fully explained. I need to get the club face back to the squared condition. If my arms swing correctly, the club face gets squared up. If my arms don't, they don't. What I have here, it might be a little hard for you to see on camera, is I have a 4x4. And I put it just outside my golf ball. Because what I do not want is to ever learn to swing my arms inside out. I need something there to help me to know where the end of out is. I need to swing my arms from inside the target line out towards the ball and then inside again. My fear is, without something there, is I won't know where I'm going. That squares the face up. What I have here is, and again, maybe a little hard for you to see on the camera, is a little device that helps me to know that I'm right on top of the golf ball. There's a hole in here, and I can see through it. If I move wrong, I lose track of it. point. The point is this. I've been doing this for so long that I wish I would have known this years ago so I wouldn't waste my time just whacking golf balls. I have this love-hate relationship with training devices. The hate comes from when they advertise the training device that it cures everything, as opposed to it's good for this, but it's not good for that. You'll never get that from me. If being on top of the golf ball is really important, then this is great for being on top of the golf ball. If learning to not swing out to the right is good, then this 4x4 really helps me out. The last thing that I want to kind of show you here is, again, I've got something, boy, you know what? One of these days I'm going to be able to explain this so you really get it. It would really be unfortunate that 10 years from now you go back to this tape and you realize how right on and correct it is, and that you wasted 10 years of... I don't come up with this stuff easily. I mean, I do the best I can to poo-poo it. Mark, you must be wrong. You must be wrong. And if I find out I'm not, golf is so much about balance, about learning to retain the correct balance. If I swing badly, I can't do it. If I swing correctly, I can do it. Knowing what I know now, I don't think you'd ever catch me hitting very many golf balls with my heels not off the ground. Too many people standing way too flat-footed, and it makes a golf club come too far from the inside, too far out. Getting up on my heels really helps that out. I'll be talking a lot more about that in the performance videos that I have coming out. But if you can just take my word for it for now, if you can get yourself up off your heels, think of what I've got here. I'm up off my heels, and I have a piece of wood here. I would not advise doing this without that. There's really something to that. So overall, the gist is when you get a chance to practice, there should be times that you practice getting right on top of the golf ball, not behind it. There should be times where you're swinging your arms correctly, where you're just making sure your arms are swinging correctly, making sure you're on top of the ball. Then there should be times where you're working on your hands. I use my power click because it's like instant feedback. If I did it wrong, if I did it right. If I do it wrong, I know about it right away. If I do it correctly, so I may just sit here and hit golf balls just using my hands to know if I did it right or not. I'd really like to start to see you organize your practice routines. The more organized you are, the less time you have to spend. Hitting thousands of balls a day probably won't get the job done. We're hitting 50 or 60 a day. Organized can get it done. Okay, well, I hope you join me back here again because there's lots more that we can go through. Thanks.